Hello YouTube. I want to tell you about what I observed while working at UPS so you can understand, as a consumer, as a potential worker, what kind of conditions the packages and the workers are in every day. The warehouses are unair conditioned except for offices strictly for management, which are very small. These are not places where workers are allowed to hang out. They have a worker break room at the very front, and warehouses that are roughly the size of 2 Walmart stores connected to each other. When a cold front is coming in, the concrete sweats heavily, causing the floor of the warehouse to flood and become saturated with water. Anything that's touching the floor at that time, including boxes, envelopes, or other consumer goods which routinely get thrown on the floor constantly, gets destroyed by the water. It was a routine thing for them to push package production down through these huge conveyor systems with giant rubberized belts that had steel woven into them at such an insane rate that the stuff would be pouring down from the second and third story, literally just rushing down, falling over the railing and smashing into the ground. Stuff would be coming off those conveyors, going down metal slides, and then moving onto plastic rolling pins where workers were expected to pull that volume down into the truck to the end of those pins and then load it in stacks. It was very, very common to see packages that were smaller crushed completely and ripped apart between bigger, heavier packages, especially irregular packages that had metal and other components like that sticking out of them. They had an area inside the building called overgoods that was essentially a metal cage that was fenced in on the top and the sides by galvanized chain link fence and fence posts. And one person would typically sit in there. Sometimes they would bring in help from the warehouse. Sometimes it'd be 2 people that would be working on large piles of dozens, if not hundreds, of packages that were destroyed and completely ripped apart, with their contents scattered throughout the building and the conveyor systems. Some of these items were poorly packed by the shipping companies or customers, but we would get consumer packages that had family photos that were 50, 100, 150 years old, variable age documents, anything you can imagine, social security documents, college degrees, vital records. There was all kinds of stuff. Cell phones, bars of gold and silver would come through the system loose sometimes from high-value packages that were busted open. And people would try to steal from the facilities. And on the way out, they would ask workers to take their hair down, they would wand them, they would have them go through a metal detector, they would search their bags, etc. Unless they were drivers. The drivers were not subjected to these searches most of the time. And they would have people take their shoes off because apparently in some cases there was such an issue with theft that they felt compelled to engage in these searches without probable cause or a warrant. And it was common practice for them to do that. So basically, they would ask you to disrobe and get naked in some cases. This happened to women too. I had a spouse that worked for the company, and they wanded her breasts before she even went through the metal detector and then asked her to remove her bra inside of an office in front of security staff without any proof that she had stolen anything or committed a crime. And That's what you can expect as a worker coming out. But packages would get thrown. They would have larger, heavier packages set on them. They would get pulled through the conveyor pins and crushed by a hydraulic conveyor press that had tens of thousands of pounds of pressure acting on it through the gears. They would put volume through the conveyor system, and the packages would be stuck on top of the moving conveyor, with the conveyor literally just grinding against the surfaces of the packages that were touching that belt. UPS does not want consumers to know this. They don't want consumers to know that these things are happening. I'm a former employee, and the conditions inside the warehouse were terrible. It was extremely hot in the summer. Anything perishable like chocolate, anything heat sensitive would be damaged or destroyed. It was well over 100 degrees inside the outbound trailer loads during the summer and the warm months. There was no climate control for humidity or for hot or cold temperature regulation. And there was particulate, a very heavy coating of visible particulate in the air from the packages that were being ground down, and from vehicle exhaust inside the building. You could see clouds of smoke coming out of the trucks at times, especially in the morning when they were departing, or in the evening when they were coming in. And there were just so many things that would happen. We would have packages come down that were leaking Clorox bleach and dissolving other consumers' packages. We would have packages that were leaking oil or gallons of adhesive and getting packages stuck to each other. Packages would get impaled by other packages that had sharp metallic objects sticking out of them in some cases. There was all kinds of crazy stuff that we would get. And the packing foam, bubble wrap, etc. from damaged packages would be left in the loads and on the floor at the end of the night, and they would actually have to have cleaning crews come through to clean up the high volume of these things that were left in the warehouse on the floor and on the grate. And it was routine to trip over those things, those plastic wraps that we put around boxes. Every time that you came into a work area, you had to check the floor in the trailers because the company wouldn't take the time to clean the floors of the trailers out, so there'd be broken glass in there. There'd be thumbtacks, sometimes hundreds or thousands of thumbtacks, and other materials, metallic objects, glass that was broken, you name it. Those little security devices they use in retail on clothing, the pins would be sticking up from those. Those would be pouring down sometimes. The boxes of those would get busted open. And you'd be stepping on them. You'd have them sticking in the bottom of your shoes. You'd have glass wedged into the tread on your shoes. You would be walking through motor oil. You'd be absolutely filthy by the time that you left, most nights. Not every night, but most nights. And without fail, you could blow your nose and blow out black when you take a shower after leaving there. But I left a Google review at one point, and the company pulled down my pictures documenting how consumers' packages were really just thrown in giant piles at the base of the platforms that were 5 or 6 feet high, going up to the almost 1-story high level. And the company pulled those pictures down. It was routine for people to get hurt. I got hurt twice while I was working there. Had to go to the hospital for medical attention because an object struck me in the face, right up near my eyebrow, and I thought I was going to need stitches. It was a piece of plant equipment. And another time, a train was rolling through, and a large metallic package that was long, like a vehicle axle, fell off of one of the carts and pinned me against a set of rollers, against the roller stand that holds the rollers that goes in the outbound. And I just couldn't believe that I had to go and get x-rays by myself. They didn't want to write it up, put a report, and when I got hit in the face with that metallic object, that piece of plant equipment, while breaking a jam, they wanted me back at work the next day because they didn't want it to reflect poorly on their workplace accident history. They didn't want to make a DART report, that's what it's called. And I was harassed the entire time that I was there. I worked hard, I was a good worker. I was on the safety committee. I was the CHSP co-chair for their safety committee. I did inspections throughout the workplace as a part-time employee in addition to package handling, and I would routinely clear the floors myself so that people would be able to work safe. If you get hurt or you get sick, the company will give you warning letters. If you get less than 15 hours a week because they're sending you home, etc., whatever the reason is, they're flexing you out when you get there and just sending you home after you drive to work, then they'll send you letters threatening to cancel your healthcare insurance. It was a constant fight just to have the basic ability to be there and be in peace and to be able to work safely. It was extremely hot, and I had to buy my own drinks, my own gloves, my own boots, my own clothing for working as a full-time employee. UPS provides the uniforms. I'm not sure if the drivers had to pay for them or not, but you'd be a lot better off shipping a product using the postal service or using FedEx. FedEx is far better than either one of them is if you don't want it to get damaged or destroyed. I don't recommend using UPS, both as a customer and as a former employee of nearly 10 years, for shipping your goods or to work for. Yes, they gave the employees raises. When I started out, I was making $8.50. Now they're starting workers out at about $21 an hour. But I went through a grind of nearly 9 years there where I was only making between $90 and $150 a week on average, and I stayed for the health insurance. We started out with Aetna, and they switched us to Blue Cross Blue Shield, and our co-pays went up. And it just wasn't worth it. It wasn't worth the constant hassle. You're going to get a heck of a workout like you've never experienced before working there. But it's exhausting, heavy manual labor, and you're going to encounter people in the workplace that are going to be pissed off, especially supervisors. People will cuss at you routinely. They're going to talk smack to you. You're going to have full-time and part-time supervisors, if you stay there long enough, who are going to try to abuse the crap out of you. They're going to treat you bad. And if you complain, the harassment only increases. The union doesn't do anything about any of this. When I got sick with respiratory illness, the company fired me after a major hospital. And I told them I was seriously ill. I haven't worked there for 6 years, almost 7 years. I don't recommend it. Don't work there. Don't use them to ship packages.